Oh, thank you for inviting me, Nina. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Martin, please subscribe and hit like button, helping us reaching more people. And Martin, let me start with what's going on in between the United States and Russia. We had Steve Witkoff going to after that 28-point plan on the part of the Trump administration. Right now, Steve Witkoff, together with Jared Kushner, went to Russia for 5 hours. They were talking with Russian officials. I'm talking about, we had Putin, on the part of the United States, Kushner together with Witkoff. On the part of the Russians, we didn't have the foreign minister of Russia because Rubio was not there. But we had Ushakov together with Kirill Dmitriev alongside Vladimir Putin talking to the American delegation, if we can call it that way. How do you find the situation with the war in Ukraine?
Well, as you know, I was called in and asked to write a peace plan. And I was kind of shocked, actually, being called in to do that. And but I think, after many discussions, etc., I think the real problem has been that the Trump administration has been, I would say, infiltrated to some degree by the neocons. I know a lot of people like Bessent, Treasury Secretary, but look, most people don't realize. I mean, they know he worked for Soros, all right, but that's about all they know. The real story is he was the brains behind Soros. He was not the guy that Soros was not this great trader. I traded against him plenty of times. It was Bessent who sold the idea of shorting the pound to Soros. That's what really made him famous. All right. So he was really the brains behind this. And what you have to understand, what I got caught up in before was they were asking me to put in $10 billion. It was for a regime change of Russia. All right. And I was told, put in 10 billion, you'll get 100 back. They were looking at basically overthrowing Yeltsin, sticking in Borisnovsky, and then all of the assets of Russia would be trading through the New York dealing desks. All right. I was in the middle of this. So it's not speculation or something else. All right. If you look at what Bessent is saying, he's been really against peace. He doesn't come out for endless war, but still anti-Russia. All right. I had contact with Rubio. He was also a neocon. All right. When he got Secretary of State, I was kind of surprised, and I raised that in DC, and I was told that he was the compromise to the neocons. All right, so the reason I bring this up is because if you look at what Bessent has been saying, all right, I think these guys are still on the same idea of grabbing all the assets of Russia, putting them through the New York dealing desks, and making a fortune again. There's about 75 trillion in assets there. So that said, I think that's why I was called in, because they know where I was in the middle of all this stuff, and the company that they were asking me to put the 10 billion into was Hermitage Capital Management. That is the company that Putin seized. All right. So, ironically, out of all this, I was told that we're very sorry what the Clintons did to you, but it gave you more credibility in the sense that Putin knows where I was on all this, and I've refused. So I guess that's why I was called in, because I was kind of like on the other side of all that nonsense. My concern is that, Woodcroft going over there instead of Rubio. And the peace plan that I put down, I said, look, and what I was asked was to write a plan that I thought Putin would accept. All right, so that's what I did. You can pull it down off of our site. And I explained in that whole report. So I think I managed to change the narrative that the real enemy here is Europe, not Russia. Russia has no interest in going into invading Europe. There's nothing there for them. Europe has to get all energy from Russia. Really no gold reserves you're talking about. And all they would do is be walking into Paris and the French ask, are you going to pay our pensions now? That's about it. So, war throughout history, there's got to be something to gain from it. All right, at least break even. I mean, Alexander the Great couldn't say, okay, let's go get this country. Well, what are we going to get out of it? Oh, nothing. They would have said, yeah, well, have a nice time. You're on your own, because the troops were paid from spoils, and it's just the way it is. Japan went into Manchuria for assets. All right. So there's nothing here. The real problem we have is Europe thinks that it can conquer Russia, get to 75 trillion, and that they will rise again from the ashes and be like the Roman Empire and rule the world again. Then you have the same nonsense going on with Venezuela. You have to pick up the rug a little bit. Trump is claiming drugs. Okay, that allows him to use that jurisdiction on tariffs. All right, because otherwise tariffs under the Constitution directly belong exclusively to Congress. So it has to be a national security issue for him to use this emergency statute. So that's why he has claimed drugs from China, Venezuela, etc. What is really at stake is that Venezuela is by far, it has more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. It's the largest one on the planet. Their number one client is China. All right? They're also in league with Russia. Okay? So fine, you can paint the headlines that it's about drugs, but it's not. This is about the conquest of Venezuela, seizing all the oil reserves and installing American companies in there. So Venezuela is attractive for the U.S. to go into, whereas Russia is, for the very same monetary reasons, the EU wants. All right. So at least with Russia, I had several meetings, and at least, like I said, they have no interest in going in Europe. And so I think I managed to convince them of that. In the plan that I did present, we will see. I don't know if they would take my suggestion, but I said that either Europe agrees to the plan or the U.S. should exit NATO. I warned them that NATO will try to create a false flag to justify war. To my surprise, when I said we should exit NATO, I did not get any smirks or resistance. Instead, I got, yes, we know you're right. So that's what I can say behind the curtain here. I was asked, because we have offices around the world, and I've been doing this for, close to 50 years. So they also know I will have all the contacts. So I was also, I think, called in, and I was specifically asked, can you use your back channels to get into Russia to find out? I said, fine, I would do so. All right. I believe the plan that I presented was put on Putin's desk. And I also believe 2 days later, that's when Lavrov came out and said, we're willing to guarantee that Russia is not interested in going into NATO. Because that's the whole thrust of the report that I did. And I was told it was put on Putin's desk, and then 2 days later he got that response. I can't hear you.
Russia is not interested in what, Martin?
Russia is not interested in conquering Europe. There's nothing there for it.
Yeah. Because Putin mentioned that. He said, this is absurd, but we're going to put it in the plan if they want.
Yeah, look, Russia is the richest country in the world from a natural resource perspective. They have all the gold, the diamonds, the oil. They also have timber and rare earths. So what I suggested was that, and you've heard a little bit about this, that we remove the sanctions, allow American companies to go in and do joint ventures in Russia for rare earths. Strategically, I think they like the idea because it would be dividing, again, Russia and China. Russia, is reliant also on China and rare earths. They have the technology for the mining, but lack the capital. So I suggested, a marriage here. Allow American companies to go in, provide the capital. All right. Russia has the expertise. There's a lot of people who don't understand what rare earths are. They're not really that rare. It's that you don't get them in a concentrated vein like gold. Okay. So they're spread out. So it takes a different form of mining to get them. Why are they so important? It takes 920 pounds of rare earths to make one F-35. All right, so you're getting into the national security issues here. All right. So that was part of the plan. I said we do a joint venture that would then help Russia also extract itself from China, kind of like Kissinger and Nixon, where our neocons put them back together. So my real concern is that you just had the general at NATO come out. I'm not sure if it's in the press yet, but he's even justified a preemptive strike by NATO on Russia on the terms of, hybrid attacks. How do you prove a hybrid attack? Look, I think the other reason I was called in is that they understand about the economics crisis. All right, because when they were forming the euro, as you know, I was called in for that too. All right, and I get called in for just about every foreign exchange creation or whatever. And I explained to them that you have to, if you want to create a single currency and you expect to compete with the US dollar, they had to consolidate the debt market. And that's when Hermann Kohl, who was the Chancellor of Germany at the time, before he died, he admitted that he acted like a dictator and that if he allowed the German people to vote, he would have lost 7-3. So he took Germany in without any public vote. All right, and to do that, I mean, Germany's 25% of the euro. So he insisted no consolidation of the debt because then the Germans would think it was a bailout for Greece and Italy, etc. So the problem I explained is this. If I'm as a hedge fund manager, I pick up the phone and I can say, buy me $20 billion worth of US treasuries. No problem. It's the deepest market in the world. However, with Europe, I can't do that. I still have to make the same decision as if the euro didn't exist. Do I want Germany? Do I want France? Do I want Italy? All right. It's the same thing as if the currencies were there. Okay. So that's why I warned them, look, unless you consolidate the debt, the euro will never be able to compete with the dollar. And back in 98, I was told, we understand, you're correct. However, we just have to get the euro in to create their bureaucracy, their parliament, etc. And then we'll deal with the debts later. Here we are, more than 25 years later, and they still haven't dealt with the debts, right? That's politicians. That's just the way it is. So my concern is that you just had the EU under a real cloud here. The UK came out, finance minister and France, and both admitted that they may need an IMF bailout. Now, because they never consolidated the debt, here's the nightmare. US banking system, even Canada, all right, the reserves of a bank are the national debt. Okay. In Europe, because there is no national debt, they have a cornucopia of the debt of all the member states. But we have to be politically correct, So what will happen? The same thing, and you can look it up, what happened after 2010 when Greece got into trouble. The traders are going to look and say, okay, which bank has the most French debt, assuming France goes down, okay? You're going to short that bank. So you're talking about a banking crisis here for Europe. Then on top of that, 70% of the national debt or the pension funds must be in debt, sovereign debt. So you're then wiping out the pension fund. So this, because I do the economic side besides geopolitical, I think that's why I got called in. And they were like, holy shit, I said, this is Europe's problem. And it's not that they don't know it. Like I said, you just had the two finance ministers of UK and France admit that they may need an IMF bailout. To even say that means that they're having problems selling debt. Okay, so then these idiots are out there beating the war drums And the first thing you do not buy government debt in time of war. All right, it's one thing if Russia was really invading, etc., kind of like Pearl Harbor in the United States, then they got the people behind it. Before then, they couldn't get the Americans or Congress to join war with Europe. Congress always rejected every declaration of war. It took Pearl Harbor to do that. You have to be attacked. All right, so that's the purpose of a false flag. All right, NATO will stage some sort of a false flag. You just had the minister come out, or the general come out and say, we can do a preemptive strike on a hybrid attack. All right, so no bombs or anything else. Oh, they tried to jam our radar, so that's good enough. We start World War III. So, I mean, this is a reflection of how desperate things are over there. And instead of reforming, to reform, look, I've spoken to these people. I could solve the problem in 15 minutes. All right. Problem is, they would have to give up some power. So they're not going to do that. All right. So, this is where we end up. Their choice is they needed a distraction, and that's war with Russia. And then the people, if they default without a distraction, then the people are going to be taking their pitchforks and storming the parliaments. They lost their pension, everything else. So that's really kind of what you're looking at. And I mean, you can look it up. I mean, this is not something new. Governments have done this for thousands of years. When they're in trouble, they find an external enemy. And unfortunately, that's what's taking place right now. And Russia is largely, going to be the victim here. I mean, this will be, look, you had Trump come out and made a sarcastic remark. Yes, Russia's a paper tiger. Ukraine, you can get all your land back and go take more. It wasn't serious. That was sarcasm. Why? Because that is exactly what NATO's telling everybody over there. All right, you even had Kinzinger, the ruthless neocon here in America. Actually, Google it. He actually came out and told, I think it was NBC News, we could take Russia in 3 days. 3 days. I mean, we couldn't even take Iraq in 3 days. It took 9 years. I mean, these people are delusional. You had, Dick Cheney, when we talked about going into Iraq, he said, oh no, this won't take months. We're talking about only a matter of weeks. 9 years. They always say the same shit.
Martin, you've mentioned that the United States can threaten Europe, that if they continue with this policy, this absurd policy in Ukraine, the United States can leave NATO, just let them alone. What else can Washington do to put pressure on Europeans to force them into some sort of settlement in Ukraine? Because after all, we know how important Europe is for any settlement in Ukraine, because they're part of the region. They're part of that, and Russia wants somehow to make a deal, to have a security architecture with Europe.
The problem you have there is they have neocons. Kalis she's a ruthless neocon. She's just Lindsey Graham and drag. That's about it. And she just came out and said, for Russia to rejoin the group of 8, it requires a unanimous vote, and I will never give that. I mean, these people, look, I'll tell you what I told them in meetings. In the Biden administration, you had Victoria Nuland, you had Blinken, and you had Garland. All three are neocons. All three claimed, look up their backgrounds. All three claimed that their families were from the Balkan area. All three claimed that their families were persecuted by Russians. Madeleine Albright, all right, another ruthless neocon. She's the one that got NATO to invade and bomb Serbia. Why? Because the Serbs were pro-Russian. She came from Czechoslovakia. Same thing, hated Russians. Read, Colin Powell's memoirs. He said, she completely disgusted him. She said, we have all these weapons. Why can't we just use them? These people, I don't know. What I told them is, this is what I said. I said, look, in my opinion, this is treason. All of these people that weasel their way into government positions are waging wars for personal vendetta reasons. It's like me becoming president and then sending them to go cut my grass at home. You can't do stuff like that. And this is all a personal vendetta. Kayla's it's the same thing. Nothing different. I mean, she's the one that's even come out and said Russia's too big and should be broken up. What if Putin said that about Europe? We should conquer Europe and break it all apart. That would be, front page news. If it's okay for her to say that about Russia. John McCain. I mean, look, when I shook hands with John McCain, I felt I needed a shower. I mean, he was there in Maidan, and basically, this is all about you and only you. This is about peace. Overthrow your government. And then what did they do? They stuck in an interim government and told them to attack the Donbass. This has never been about peace. And none of them give two shits, really, if one Ukrainian is still alive. This is what they were pulling off in Romania. And then the guy who was basically elected, it was like, he was really influenced by Russia, etc. Why? Why did they go through all this stuff? All right, the second election, Macron even went there to make sure the EU won. Why? Because NATO's building the biggest base to attack Russia in Romania. The Romanian people voted against this stuff because they know what's going on is that the EU could care less about Eastern Europeans. Send them in there, give them a gun, tell them to go kill some Russians. And what I've actually heard, very derogatory, who really cares? They all used to be communists anyhow. Look, I was speaking to Romania and they were told to, from the EU, that they had accepted 100,000 migrants from the Middle East. These people are deranged. They think they can bring these people in, hand them a gun, go kill some Russians. I've warned them. I said, the last time somebody tried this was the Roman Emperor, Valens, around 364. Attila the Hun was coming. He let the Goths in, trained them. Okay, thought he would build up his army against Attila the Hun. They said, thank you very much. They turned, attacked the Romans, and killed the emperor in battle. Yeah. All right. These, you're letting in all these people from the Middle East. They're not there to defend Europe against democracy and ideas. I mean, they're there for a free lunch. I don't know. I mean, our computer shows nothing but rising civil unrest next year. And I've done my best, as you know. I mean, the computers.
Martin, how do you see the possibility of a conflict and escalation between Russia and Europe?
Oh, very high for next year, absolutely. But in reality, Europe will start it, not Russia. No matter what they claim, oh, Russia did this or Russia did that or whatever. And look, we had employees in Kiev and in Donetsk. All right. When Putin first went in, he went right up to Kiev, and there was a whole column of tanks. And you can look it up. I was concerned. I said, look, I'll send in a private jet to get my staff out. And they said, not necessary. They're not doing anything. I said, what's going on? It's just for show. He had the tanks there to show that he could have taken Kiev, but didn't. And then pulled them back. All right. All this nonsense. Oh, Russia's weak. They haven't been able to take Ukraine. He never wanted to. He could have. All right. He called it a special operation, and that was simply to protect the Russians that are in the Donbass, period. All right. It's, the film they did on me on the forecaster, it appeared in Russia, and all the subtitles were done by the staff in Donetsk. The Russians, they speak Russian. So, I've been in the middle of a lot of this stuff. So it's not speculation or theory or whatever. I mean, I've been there, done this, and know every which side from Sunday. So, but I think you will see the EU is getting desperate. I think they're going to create some sort of a false flag justification. And they're going to have to say that Russia did something, because in order to do this, it's called rally around the flag. And you can look it up. They know that if you say, okay, fine, sign up, join the army, where we want to go invade Russia, they're not going to get volunteers. You need to be able to say, Russia just attacked us, like Japan and Pearl Harbor. Then everybody volunteered. Okay, it's called rally around the flag. So that's the purpose of a false flag. And even Pearl Harbor, look it up. It was widely considered that, first of all, FDR deliberately froze all the Japanese assets in the United States, as we've done to Russia. And he then put an embargo. They were getting all their energy from the United States. When they said they were going to put in, get energy from somebody else, FDR said, we're going to put an embargo around Japan so you can't get energy from anybody else. He did everything possible, all right, to create war. And there was a Senate investigation on that, because a few days before, he pulled all the strategic aircraft carriers out of Pearl Harbor. And then it came out, and you can look on our site, there was a leak. I published the newspaper in Honolulu Tribune a few days before said we're going to be attacked on the weekend. They knew. And the Senate investigation they had to do it because it came out that the U.S. had broken the Japanese code. Their conclusion was, well, we're not entirely sure that FDR really knew about that. Everybody else did, but not him. Come on. And he could not get the United States into war with Europe, period. Congress would never issue a declaration of war. So he needed the rally around the flag tactic. You have to be attacked. And this is why that Italian admiral just came out and said, we can do a preemptive strike against Russia for a hybrid attack. So I would be concerned, and they may do it as soon as January, February.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Martin, for being with us today. It was a great pleasure to talk to you today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Take care down there. At least you're out of the gunshot range.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. See you soon, Martin.
All right, take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.